welcome back to my channel. This is Dom and a video on how I turn that into that. So yeah, I've been asked a couple of times about doing a simple painting video on how I've been painting my American Civil War figures. People who follow the channel will know that I have got rather sidetracked into the massive rabbit warren that is the American Civil War as a project, and have been painted up both Union and Confederate forces for primarily to use for black powder, but we'll see what else I might use them for. And someone asked if I've done a video, if I'd do a video on it, I have to say I'm a little loath to do this because I thought I got grief sometimes for the videos I've done around Napoleonics, but having been on a few forums and seen some comments around, I already had some comments on some of the stuff I've done with American Civil War. Wowza, there's some passionate people out there. We'll call them passionate. Yeah, there we go. Anyway, so full caveat here. I am no expert on the American Civil War. That said, I have done a bit of research. I've been working my way through a number of research books. I've been reading histories, I've been reading books, I've been looking at websites and forums, and the one thing I'm absolutely sure is that nobody's sure. Well, and actually, you know, what I am sure is that everybody is very sure, and their view is the right one. So this is my way of doing it. I'm not going to say it's necessarily 100% correct, but it works for me. Let's leave it there. If you really have your own opinion on how to paint it, fantastic. Just, you know, keep it to yourselves. There we go. That's what I'm going to say. Anyway, so enough of that. I have here in my little fingers, my horrible scabby fingers, a peri-plastic American Civil War figure. Now, they do box sets of Confederates and they do box sets of Unions in sackcloth, I think they are, and then they do a sort of more generic thing. I believe this is one of the more generic figures. He has been undercoated, assembled, undercoated with a grey varnish, a grey undercoat. I like grey as an undercoat. For me, it just works nicely. I don't particularly like black, but this is how I do it, so that's how I'm going to do it. So first up, I'm going to take our little figure and I'm going to use some of the blessed contrast paint. This is Gulliman's Flesh. It's actually a very empty bottle of Gulliman's Flesh before it goes out, and I'm just going to do what it says on the tin: paint his flesh. There we go. So not really been anything spectacular there. Just literally did the hands that you could see and the face. Now you notice with the grey undercoat, it's still drying obviously, but with the grey undercoat, it doesn't hold the contrast quite as well as it would do if it was on a white one. But that doesn't matter because later on we'll correct that. But what I do like, and why I continue to use the contrast, as you can see already, it's starting to sink into the mouth, the nose, the eyes, and leaving a very much darker brown look there. The face itself, the cheeks, the chin, the forehead, the nose tips are too grey. I mean, it looks like a walking zombie if you went with that. So, next up, obviously, should leave this to dry, but I'm not going to because I'm lazy. I'm trying to do a video for you. So next up, now this seems to be the biggest. Well, no, there's two big issues around American Civil War figures I can see. People complain. In fact, I had somebody complain about my blue wasn't dark enough for the Union figures. Yeah, whatever. I'm using this one. This is a contrast Azurum blue. I think any of the darker ones are good. I did use the ultramarine blue, but I found that one just, I don't know, there's something about the Doesn't seem to adhere quite as well as some of the other blues within the range, but it is what it is. Now this is a bit lighter than I want it to be, but that doesn't matter because I'm going to give it a wash. So I'm going to paint his keepy. And then we'll do his jacket. Obviously, when I paint these, normally I do them in strips of 6. A, that means I can hold on to them easier. And B, I get through a lot more painted in one go. As I may have not said at the beginning, this is to get a good standard figure onto the table that's going to look reasonable at 3 foot away. I have to say I have thoroughly enjoyed painting these Perry ACW figures. Someone said in one of the comments on one of my videos that they are detailed enough but not too much, and that's well said, because exactly that, they have a bit of detail but not so much that it's finicky, shall we say. Right, so that is that. Now we are going to have to let him dry a bit. You can see on this particular figure his belt goes under that jacket, but it doesn't appear on the other side, so that's interesting. He's also got a satchel on the side. There's a sheath for his bayonet behind the below the bag, and he's got an ammo pouch. So I'll be back when this is dried. Right, so it's largely dried. I have also off screen just done his moustache, sideburns and hair, just using contrast wild wood just to do that. So next I'm going to do is trousers. Now again, there's a lot of discussion on forums. Oh my goodness, a lot of discussion around colour trousers and what have you. I'm going with the sort of stereotype cartoon, if you like, version, which is a very paler blue, basically, to go with the darker blue. So for this I've gone for troglodyte blue from Army Painter. I've yet to find a speed paint that sort of does it quite right for me. There's another blue I've been using, electric blue I think it's called, but either of them are absolutely fine. So I'm just going to do his trousers in this colour. I should have put this one on a stand or something to hold, but never mind. It is what it is, only one figure. So I will do this and probably fast forward all the speed this up. There you go. So there he is. His trousers are done, and his jacket and hat are done. His hair and his moustache are done. So next up, I'm going to just get some regular black. I'm going to do his boots. I'm going to do his belt under his jacket there, and I'm going to do his ammo pouch. I'm also going to do the cross belt that goes from the ammo pouch around his shoulders. Back to this side. So I'll do that off screen because it's just painting black at the end of the day. Right, there you go. He is progressing nicely. Don't worry if you've noticed you've missed a little bit, or there's a little bit of the grey showing through, or what have you. We got magic phase to go through yet. Also didn't mention I also did the cap, or the keepy peak in black. So there you go, that is done. Now, so on this figure, he's got a sackcloth bag Now it isn't terribly clear, but you can tell there are two straps on the figure. So I believe this is actually a water bottle or canteen that you can see much more clearly on some of the other figures, because there wouldn't be any reason for two straps if that was the lid of the bag. Now you could just paint that as if it's the lid of the bag, and so be it, but given the fact there are canteens on other figures, you might as well do this. So I'm going to first of all do the sackcloth bag. For that I'm using khaki webbing from Army Paint. This is Warlord, sorry. The black I used was just scale 75. Doesn't matter, any black will do for that. So I am going to, without trying to splash it everywhere, I'm just going to do this sackcloth bag here. So don't worry if you don't go right to the very edge, because we're going to put a wash on this which will clear a lot of it. Now the strap for this guy appears, the dominant strap appears to be the canteen one. See, it just looks like it's going there, so therefore I'm going to just do where I can see two straps, which is only really at the top there, and then going through onto here. Now half the battle of painting, from my perspective, who's someone who just wants to do them quickly and easily, is finding out what the optimum way round to paint things. There's a bit too much paint on that door brush. So what I mean is, if I'd done the water bottle one first and its strap, it would be much harder for me to get in and do this one without splodging it everywhere. So looking at your figures and making sure that you're doing it in the right sequence, that's what I should have said better, will help you in the long run. So we'll do the sackcloth bag. There you go. So I haven't bothered to do the strap for this one down the lower end, because you can only see one strap, so there's absolutely no point as far as I'm concerned. So that is that. So I'm now going to do the other strap and the water canteen, and I'm going to be using another scale 75. This is African Shadow. Now it doesn't matter, it could be any sort of leathery brown is a good idea here. But whichever one you want is absolutely fine. So for this figure, this guy, I'm just going to try and do the strap. Do a little bit of the strap there and leave some of the paler colour coming through. So a little bit clumsy, but that's fine. I also did the sheath for the bayonet that hangs down underneath the bag. Again, it doesn't, I mean, it probably should be black, but it's so small you're really not going to notice it. So while I've got that same dark colour out, I'm going to do the barrel of the gun. It's coming together okay, so I'm going to let that dry, mainly because I made it too wet, and be back in a second. Right, it's nearly dry, so I'm now going to do the musket or the rifle. Sorry, I just sort of missed a bit there, got a little bit of brown on the sackcloth. I'm going to do the sling for the musket, and I'm going to use that same khaki webbing. And then I'm going to use Army Paint plate metal mail. plate mail metal, sorry. Now, I've mentioned this before on some other videos. It comes out quite silvery and bright, but I kind of like that because I'm gonna dull it down with a wash. So I'd rather have it a little bit light and then go darker rather than start at a very dark point. Because you could use a proper gunmetal colour, but as I say, it gets very dark very quickly. So much like Steve's viewing habits. So there you go. So what I'm going to do is load that onto the brush just on the tip and run it. Now again, this is just a representation of the barrel. I'm not trying to do an accurate rendition. I'm just running it down the barrel of the gun. And also there's some sort of, I don't know what they're called, but the bits that, there's some sort of bars that go around the rifle in a couple of places. So I'm just going to try and paint those in. And I'm just going to do the trigger and the stock area here. Again, I'm just making it look, it's a representation, so you just want to have a little bit of, so it doesn't look like solid brown. And there you go. So that in a few minutes is the, oh hang on, there was one bit I missed there. Again, it's not very obvious on this figure, but on the others you'll notice on the Perrys, this is actually here, is actually a buckle, belt buckle. Probably don't need to worry about it, but how will these trousers stay up if you don't? So it's not terribly obvious on this one, but I've done it anyway. So there we go, that's the ugly phase. That's alright, come out okay. So we're going to let that thoroughly dry now. Going to leave it well alone, and then I'll be back. Right, it's pretty much dry. So this is the ugly phase. We're pretty well, everything's painted. There's a few bits of touch-up which need to happen. But next up, we're going to use the magic baby. Shade Nuln Oil from Citadel. Give that a good shake. This is where, if I had it on a stand or something, it would be so much easier. Why didn't you do that, Dom? I do normally, but I don't normally paint one figure, so... Right, so I've got a reasonable sized brush. We're just going to slap it all over. Good amount on. Try not to let it pull too much. But you want to get it all over the figure and into all the recesses. Oops. He looks a mess at the moment. I'll let him dry and be back. Right, so while this was drying, I have stuck it down to a base so that I can actually handle it without handling the figure. So normally I put them on great long strips like that and paint them that way. Don't usually do individual figures like this. Anyway, the wash has dried nicely. You can see it's largely adhered to it. It's just dulled it down, basically. The whole figure is dulled down. So I'm now going to just do a couple of highlights. I'm not going to go crazy. These are figures that are going to be used in big battalions, and 3-foot rule always applies for me. So I'm going to do, next up I'm going to use Army Painter Tanned Flesh. Really like this colour a lot. And I'm just going to dab. Sorry, I'm just talking and doing something is always tricky for me. All I'm going to do is just do the, there's too much on that brush. All I'm going to do is just touch the nose, the chin, the ear and the cheek, like that. Don't know how much this is coming out, but I shall try and show you. There you go. See that? Hopefully you can see that. Because of that dark wash on a fairly dark figure or base coat, when you do that little bit of highlighting with that and leave the sunken eyes, the mouths, the gaps around or the edge around the nose, it just sort of puts instant shade on it, which is really good. I'm also going to do the fingers here, where he's holding the musket or rifle, depending on the period. That one hasn't quite. Always difficult to paint round a camera. And then we'll just do the back of his hand. There we go. That's good enough. So that's that finished. Now remember, if you were doing this, you know, like I do a strip of 6, you do one, and by the time that's finished, you go back and do the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Next up, I'm going to use, this is, what is this? Vallejo Prussian Blue. Again, doesn't necessarily have to be this particular, but a sort of fairly, not completely black blue, but a mid-tone blue is good here, because we want to use it to highlight the blue of the jacket. So I've got a little bit here. I'm just going to, where the sort of light would shine on the uniform, I'm just going to touch it up a little bit. Right there on the elbow is always a place where the sun will catch. If there's any natural creases, I'm going to pull them out as well. I'm just putting a little bit, bringing the blue back up again, I guess, is what arty painters would say, which I'm not. A bit on the keepy. Keppy. Is it keppy or keepy? Keppy uppy. There we go. Do a bit on the collar. There we go. Just brings that back up again. Let that dry. Clean the brush. Now I don't always bother with the trousers, but on this one I must have watered down the paint a bit too much because the greys come through and they look really mucky. So I'm going to go back over the trousers. I'm going to use our troglodyte blue again. Again, as I mentioned, it doesn't have to be troglodyte blue. I checked actually, and the other paint I do use from time to time is sky blue from scale 75. Nice blue as well, similar to this one actually, very, very similar colour. So I'm just gonna, I was gonna say something, oh I will say it, I'm just gonna touch up his groin. There you go, like that. Ooh, matron. And just do the front of his trousers there where the shine would be. And just, because you've dulled it down with the wash, it doesn't have to be that much lighter to appear as a wash, appear as a, you know, highlight. So that is that. So you don't want to go too heavy with that, but you just want to pick it up just enough. And that is largely it. Now I could potentially tidy up his strap on the, I don't know, do I want to do that? The strap has got a bit dirty. I don't know whether I can be bothered to do it, because you're not really going to notice it. No, I'll leave it. But I think we're pretty much done. Now the only thing, now on this model it doesn't have it, but on some of the others you'll notice there's a plate on the ammunition box on their back. So I'm not going to worry about it, I'm going to add it in anyway because it looks good. So I'm just using Cheaty. This is a Sharpie metallic pen. I picked this up in one of the crafty shops for a couple of quid, nothing major. And I'm just going to touch there. There you go. Which is roughly where it is on the figure, on the other versions. We've already done his belt buckle. And I think we're pretty much there with him. So, just going to let that dry, and then we're just going to give him a really, and I mean really, light dry brush to finish him off. Back in a minute. Right, final step. I've got, this is AK Deck Tan. Deck Tan is the best for doing a little dry brush afterwards, just to put that dust and sort of slightly worn look into a figure, I think. I've got this old makeup brush, which is so soft, it's unbelievable. I put a really tiny amount, and I mean a tiny amount. I rub virtually all of it off. I'm just going to give him a little bit of a Michael Bentine. I'm just going to give him a little bit of a touch up. There we go. Just very lightly, just to bring up a bit of dusty effect. That's it. That is it. Now, once you've done, a reasonable number of these fellas, put them on the base, built the base up around them. That's how they could look. Dead simple, really easy to do, pretty effective, and it bangs out a unit really quickly. I'm quite happy with that. From 3 foot away, this fella is going to look awesome with his compatriots. So there you go. That is it. Now some of them obviously are different. They've got, these ones got a sort of bedroll going around there. Again, doesn't appear to be any uniformity to what the colours of the bedrolls were. So I've just gone with various mixtures, because from what I read, certainly for the Rebels, a lot of it was sort of just blankets they looted or they brought from home, so they could be any kind of colour or pattern on them. So you do what you like. I'm sure somebody will have some opinion. It is ACW after all. There's also some of these figures have got beards and moustaches, but really otherwise the principle is exactly the same. You can see on a couple of these I've done different coloured trousers just because trousers wore out. But that's the base approach that I've done with all of them. So all that needs to happen with him is he needs a varnish, and then let him dry, and we'll show you what he looks like at the very end. Right, so I have varnished him, just used my usual matte spray just to coat him over. It's still slightly wet, but done enough. But I think, I mean, Plastic Crack, we have a lot of banter around whether you should varnish your figures. I always varnish my figures. As much as anything else, although, plastic figures these days don't need a huge amount of protection in terms of varnish. For me, it just brings the colours together. It just finishes the figure off in terms of that matte finish. And it's a force of habit as well for me. So anyway, he is done. So basically that approach has allowed me to paint quite a large number of Union figures, and I use a very similar approach with the Confederates. If people are interested, I'll do a quick video on that as well. Let me know in the description. But it's allowed me in a matter of days to paint up quite a lot of figures. So when I say quite a lot of figures, I mean quite a lot of figures. So this is what I've painted in the last couple of weeks, alongside probably equivalent number of rebel forces, using exactly the technique you've seen. So 1, 2, 3 battalions of regular Union troops and a unit of Zouaves. They're a little bit more intricate. A couple of commanders and a battery of guns and their limbers. And basically that approach that I just showed you with this little fella was how I did all these fellas. Now basing wise, because somebody is bound to ask me, I did my usual technique. I used the Vallejo Oops, get it into the camera. Did my usual Vallejo European mud, which is a lovely gloopy, see in there? Gloopy, muddy constituency. Stick them figures down on the base, and then just sort of work that around with a dull knife, and work the mud all the way around the figure while it's still drying. Then just push various tufts into it, and because they've got a little bit of tackiness on the bottom and the mud is tacky as well, they'll stick in there. You don't need to glue them in any way, and then leave it to dry thoroughly. Now generally I'll base and then varnish, because I'm using a spray varnish, and that just helps any tackiness to hold those tufts in place. But that's basically how I do that, and that allows me, that approach, as I say, has allowed me to produce quite a lot of figures, and I'm very happy with how these have come out. No, they're not going to win any painting competitions, but there'll get to be boots on the table that allow me to play the game as quickly as possible, and with figures that I don't feel too bad about. There you go, that's my figures done. Hope you enjoyed it, hope you found that useful. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe. If you didn't, don't. And let me know in the comments down below. Are you embarking on an ACW project like me? Have you thought about it? If it's not a project you're interested in, any little techniques you've used that may enhance these figures just a little bit more, gratefully received. As I say, I'm no expert. These are just how I do it. So always interested to see and hear how other people do it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you again soon. This is Dom, signing out.